I'm going to not put us live. We are
You're going to
live. Okay.
fail to put us live.
Yeah, that would be exactly what happened.
Okay. So, so I got to experience going viral on YouTube this weekend.
Really? Which
Yeah,
video?
our video about the topic we're going to talk about today.
Really?
So yeah, so my Friday, like we post Space Bites on Fridays,
Uh huh.
and we got like 50,000 people watching it within the first hour.
Wow.
Yeah, normally we get about, oh, I guess it was like 50,000 within about 10 hours. Anyway, normally we get about 20,000 viewers in a day. And
Yeah.
so and it's about 300,000 so far.
Oh, geez.
And
That.
tons of new subscribers, like drove a couple of thousand subscribers to the channel. But it's amazing how much it just is like catnip to the flat earthers, to the moon deniers. So like most of the comments on the video during that period were just, space fake, made in Hollywood basement, blah 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 blah. And it's so funny to see when you pierce outside of your normal audience to a wider audience, you
Yeah.
get a completely different reaction to the content that you create. It was a very
Yeah.
funny, it was a very, very funny thing to see. Um,
Mainstream humans can be scary.
yeah. I mean, you just like I think my hope is that I slowly and carefully either bring in new viewers or shun self-select. Viewers are self-selecting away from my content, but to have like the video put in the front of so many people at the same time, you're just like, okay, this this is all of humanity now. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
timing is very. I mean, obviously, you picked this topic on Friday,
Yeah. Yeah. And
so you preempted our other topic so that we could talk about this, which I think is fun.
it's one of these things where I have a lot of very deep feels about
Mm.
how Eclipse is going so far. Um,
Hmm.
I have a lot of so I wrote a short piece end of January reflecting on the NASA Remembrance Day and how the reason that we have to have it is to remember that with both space shuttles, the reason we lost them is because more emphasis got put into getting shit done than getting shit done safely.
Hmm.
And it just feels like 2003 all over again.
Except no people are on
No
board.
people,
Yeah,
but this massive layoffs, funding cuts, but expectations remain high.
yeah.
So,
Zepfin's asking
thank
if
you,
they got an
Broken.
image back yet. Yes, they did.
Yeah,
There is an image from Intuitive
it's
Machines.
rather
There's also an
rather hilarious.
there's also an image of Intuitive Machines from orbit taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And then the other news is that Slim is back.
Wait, how?
It survived the lunar night and it's back.
Okay.
Yeah, which is amazing. Although it's also upside down. So,
This is
oh,
new. I can't remember any other spacecrafts that fell over.
mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
that's not normally a thing. We
that
fail in many other ways.
yeah, there is a design issue, a paradigm clearly that's going on here. I mean, you would think that it was very smart with the Slim lander, land and then flop over onto
Yeah,
its wider, lower center of gravity. Like that makes
yeah,
sense, right?
yeah,
But for it to land upside down and be perched that way is bonkers.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
pick a direction.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, yeah. The and so with intuitive machines with Odysseus, it's on its side, and Slim is
Upside
like
down.
Slim. Yeah, because like it was supposed to land on its side, but it kept going. So it's upside down. Um,
We should be recording this shit.
I guess. Well, I mean, we'll talk about. We're going to talk about it when we do the show because it's going to be the same
Yeah,
topic.
I need to get all my notes open. Sorry, everyone. I had another meeting before this one, and I'm just still doing the Monday. That's literally the inside of my head right now. Is just going wah really loud.
Monday.
Yeah, yeah. Back when we did Slacker Astronomy and the tagline was for me, for you, for the voices in my head, it's because there are screaming voices in this head.
Our tagline is how we only what how we know what we know.
Right.
We help you understand what we know and how we know what we know.
Yeah.
Not for the voices in your head, although that
Thank
is
you, no.
understood.
It's true. It's true. I need to open that, and I need to create a new window so that I don't see emails coming in, because that is a pathway to madness. Yeah, I just love with this particular, is it Odyssey or Odysseus?
Odysseus.
Odyssey. It is Odysseus. Okay.
Yeah, named after like the Greek.
Yeah.
The Odysseus, the Greek. He did the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Isn't Odysseus did the Odyssey? Yeah.
Something.
It's named
Anyways.
after the person.
Yes.
Not the concept of a long journey.
Yeah. So Odysseus was initially like, we succeeded, everything's fine. And then the next day was like, no, everything not fine.
Everything not fine. Yeah. One other piece of space news. We got the names for the Chinese lunar lander and the lunar rover.
Ooh.
Let me see if I get the names again.
I'm going to shove muffin in my face while you do that.
So
I have a correction from our intro. Philae also fell over on Chiriguri, so there is precedent. Although it kind of bounced around in the process.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the space capsule is called Mengzhou, and the lander called Lanyue. So Mengzhou means dream vessel, and that's for the capsule. And it's big. It's 9 meters long.
That's huge.
And 22 metric tons.
That's huge.
That's a huge capsule. Yeah, that's a beefy capsule. And then the lander, Lanyue. For those of you who watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, the name of the character that Sokka meets in the second to last episode is named Yue, and that is the Chinese word for moon, and then you understand why her name is Yue. And so Lan Yue, embracing the moon. And then they're working on their super heavy lift carrier, which is the Long March 10. So and then the lander will carry enough room for 2 astronauts and a 200 kilogram rover. So out of the bat, they're going to go.
They're taking an SUV with them. Actually, they're taking a Mack truck with them.
No, 200 kilograms? That's not very big.
Oh, I heard 200 tons.
No, 200 kilograms.
My brain translated to tons, and I was like, holy shit, what is that?
Yeah, no, they're taking a very flimsy electric bicycle with them.
Okay.
4-wheeled electric bicycle. Yeah. But they're taking them, first landing, they're going to bring a rover with them, which is pretty cool.
That's...
Okay. Should we begin?
You
ready?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if there's anything in the chat that needs attention paid to, seeing if anyone is complaining about anything. I see no complaining. Our stuff seems to be going out okay. I'm going to hit record on my audio. I'm going to hit record on the video. We are recording.
Okay. Astronomy Cast, episode 710, NASA's Commercial Payload Program. No, Commercial Lunar. All right. Astronomy Cast, episode 710, NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Program. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I am doing well. I am greatly enjoying the fact that this year for Lunar New Year we have attacked the moon with things that can't stand upright.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to get into this. Um, so
The
I
moon
mentioned
won.
I mentioned a couple of episodes ago that I'm trying to come up with my own seasons here. And
Yeah.
so we just experienced first crocus season.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. That feels like hope, like we're reaching the end of a long dark tunnel and of winter and spring is almost here. So it feels good. Feels
We
good to
just had
see.
first skunking. It's less hopeful.
Write that down in a calendar. Are you kidding? That's vital.
They're supposed to still be hibernating.
Yeah. You chart the seasons by when you see the first skunk. That's awesome.
Smell.
In the
Smell. No seeing. Smell.
Oh, you didn't see it. All right.
No.
In the olden days, NASA developed its missions using a variety of in-house engineers and external suppliers. As more commercial companies are targeting the moon, NASA is working with partners to deliver its payload to the lunar surface. Today, let's talk about NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Program. And we'll talk about it in a second. It's time for a break. And we're back. So, give us a sense of how missions to the moon were done. Although it's been a very long time since NASA has sent a payload to the surface of the moon. I don't know, was it the Apollo program was the last time the Americans went to the moon? But traditionally, if if NASA was going to send a payload, some kind of lander rover to the moon, what would they do?
So in the ancient past, prior to my birth, they said, hey, contractors, we're doing this thing. We're going to overly micromanage it to make sure it gets done right. We're going to use the best minds everywhere. And Congress is going to help us and be supportive. And the nation is going to make this the most exciting thing that has ever happened. And the entire planet is going to tune in and watch it on TV. And it was kind of
That sounds
awesome.
exactly like NASA's request for proposal.
Well, so
Written in that kind of flowery language.
with Apollo, they didn't exactly do requests for proposals. It was we're going to do this. And I'm sure there were requests for contracts put out, but we now live in a different world where instead what we've seen is with various attempts to land in recent years, NASA has had instruments on Indian on the Chandrayans. It has had, I think, I'm going to fact
It's on a
check this.
South
I'm sorry.
Korean rover orbiter. It had a instrument.
Bereshit. Did Bereshit have a NASA instrument?
I don't know.
This one, I'm sorry, Rich.
Right.
You're gonna have to Google. I should have looked this up. Bereshit NASA.
But NASA definitely partners with other nations to sneak instruments on board their spacecraft. This has happened many times in the past,
and
especially with the European Space Agency. But
and with all of these instruments in the past, it's been a process of there is a rideshare opportunity to get to the moon on another country's spacecraft, and everything is handled through multilateral agreements, bilateral agreements, and these are generally NASA built through contracts instruments.
So then how is this all different with the commercial lunar payload service?
It's in some ways philosophically different. So when you're partnering with JAXA, when you're partnering with the Indian Space Agency, ISRO, it's agency to agency agreement where the agencies are responsible for making sure things lower down the pipeline don't get screwed up. With what we're seeing with the commercial launches, NASA is saying, hey, I heard you're going to the moon because you told me.
Hmm.
And we are going to pay to have our instrument on your spacecraft. And we recognize that the money you get from us to carry our instrument on your spacecraft is going to do good things to your bottom line, your motivation, and hopefully increase the chance that you will succeed. But the mission is yours. We are
Right.
not micromanaging this. And so you don't have the same oversight that you get with agency run missions. Even with the smaller missions like Osiris Rex, where it was run out of a university, but it was a NASA mission where NASA had complete oversight on every aspect of the mission.
And so, like, how does the process work then? So let's say somebody, I guess NASA has some science goal. They want to, I don't know, test out a new idea for a drill on the surface of the moon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, how would that process work? They know they
Or
wanted to,
laser lidar. That's
sure,
another one that's
whatever it
quite
is.
common.
Yeah.
So they have their commercial lunar center in NASA. It's a cost section of NASA. And through the CLPS program and other related programs, they put out periodic calls for proposals where companies are asked, what can we do to partner with you? What are you doing? Why should we partner with you? Convince us that you are the end all be all and our instruments should ride with you. And what instruments, it's basically a dating service for
Right.
instruments on landers. It's a competitive process. Each proposal is reviewed by a committee of peer reviewers. Uh, Not everyone is selected. These are the best of the best.
Yeah, they have right now. NASA has 14 suppliers. So
Mm-hmm.
they originally, when they announced the program back in 2018, they announced a partnership with 9 companies,
Yeah.
and some of the names are going to be familiar: Astrobotic,
Yeah.
Intuitive
Peregrine.
Machines, Firefly Aerospace, Martin, Maston, Moon Express, Orbit Beyond. So all these companies, and then uh, in 20, what was it? 20 in 2018, sorry, in 2018 they added 5 suppliers that you've probably heard of: Blue Origin,
Yeah.
SpaceX, Sierra Nevada. And so in this case, NASA will say, okay, we want this payload delivered to the surface of the moon. And then they reach out to those 14 potential suppliers and they say, who will put this on the moon for us
Yeah.
and for what price? And
Eh,
then they get proposals from all the different companies.
yeah. And the thing about this is it's trying to reach a future where, just like right now, if NASA wants to do a specific um, experiment that requires, for instance, citizen science, this is something that I've done for, or solar eclipse handling, they will often put out standard calls for proposals saying, we are trying to take advantage of this following event. You are asked to submit proposals in this very narrow area and tell us how you would meet our needs. And they're trying to get delivering things to the moon to be as easy and commonplace as delivering eclipse outreach to rural areas in Texas.
Right. And I mean, you think about the analogy here, like if you want to set up a antenna in some far off place. Say you
Mm-hmm.
want to set up a radio tower. You find
Mm-hmm.
a company and
Yeah.
you tell them what you need, and then they build you a radio tower, and then you take control of it, or like,
Yeah.
you have somebody build you a house, and or delivery. Like if you want to have a package delivered to some place on Earth, you don't build a truck, build a trucking company. You just pay for the service of getting the thing delivered. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, I'm sure there are some really nice analogies, but like obviously this is
Well,
how
let's go with your
it.
shipping analogy. We're at the
Yeah,
process right now of trying to go from always hiring FedEx or UPS or DHL to instead sometimes hiring that local courier company that can get things cross town on their bicycle. So in the past, they've used big agency to agency agreements. And right now, they're trying to hire that new, more nimble company that can weave between the cars and potentially get hit now and then.
right, and which we'll talk about in a second. But it's time for another break, and we're back. So let's talk about the pros and cons. Like the pro here is that it's less expensive. You only have to pay for the, a fixed price cost for the delivery of your package to the surface of the moon, and I guess eventually other places. That's all great, and should come in relatively inexpensive, as you said. You have these nimble operators. What are the cons?
Well, they're taking the risk like a venture capitalist of trying to use their we want you to deliver us this, and we're asking you because if you do it, you might create an entirely new industry. They are trying to disrupt planetary science by having commercial agencies deliver instruments to the surface of the moon instead of relying on governmental contractors to deliver things to the surface of the moon.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and that still sounds like a plus to me, because, like, you can imagine you're say with a small research agency, say
Yeah.
you're with a university, and you have an idea for an experiment that you want to run on the moon, and you go to NASA and you get funding for your experiment, you develop the mission, they give you budget for delivery to the moon. You go with an established moon surface provider that has a ride share. They got 12 slots open. Each slot
Hmm.
costs however many $1 million. You get one of those slots, and your instrument is delivered to the surface of the moon. And, NASA didn't have to micromanage any part of that. So that all sounds good. So what's the downside?
How many companies that venture capitalists fund actually succeed?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So like
So,
so I guess part of the downside is that the company that you've chosen to even deliver this package to the moon could go out of business.
right. And it's not just out of business, it's in the process of getting to that. A lot of bad things have to happen. Every new company starts with an amazing dream, with people who are passionate and intelligent, hopefully, and driven, definitely, or they wouldn't be starting a new company. And there's a certain magic that has to occur that allows a company to go from potential to fully realized success. And along that pathway is a whole lot of lack of sleep, stress, not necessarily being able to pay yourself because you made promises and things came in overpriced and the money has to get cut from somewhere. And we saw with the most recent CLPS mission that we're going to get to later
Mhm.
that a disable this prior to launch didn't get disabled. And these kinds of really simple mistakes are generally the result of groups that either don't have the correct process controls, the checklists that you have to go down, or they're simply trying to accomplish too much with too little, where too little can be any combination of money, sleep, staffing, or all
Right.
of the above.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
the downside is really whenever you embark on any kind of project, like if back in my olden days, I used to work as a supplier I used to work for like a software company, and we would do custom builds for clients. There was always it's always the build versus buy argument. Do
Yeah.
we staff up a team internally where we build the capabilities to develop this thing, and it's and we just continue committing resources to it until it is complete,
Yeah.
and it go vastly over budget, and we are just stuck eating that cost month after month, year after year as we develop this thing? Or do we go to some outside supplier, ideally with some fixed price guarantee? If the project goes over budget, the thing takes too long, that's too bad. That's the
Yeah.
supplier's problem. They agreed to deliver us this capability, but inside the supplier, you said, if they're really good, then they've got a really great production system. They're able to make a profit. They're able to deliver on time, on budget. And if they're still learning, then things take longer. People
Yeah.
lose sleep. It's crunch time. It can be a very difficult experience, and compromises have to be made. So,
Yeah.
we don't know what went wrong, but we know that things went wrong.
Yeah.
And and partly just not having the experience so far. You can't get there without going through this learning phase. And so I think, NASA's commitment to this process is saying, like, we understand this is going to be rough, but we'll get through this. Hopefully, they'll end up with 14 partners, some combination of which have proven success, track records of delivering payloads to the surface of the moon that then just go on for years and years and years. But right now, we're in that, like, things aren't working out
Awkward
great.
phase.
Yeah, that awkward phase. All right, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what has actually happened with the Eclipse program so far after our break. And we're back. All right, so let's talk about the two missions that have fallen under this program that have launched so far. Where do you want to start? I guess we'll start with Astrobotic.
Astrobotic? Yeah,
Yeah.
so Astrobotic's Peregrine lander, that I have to admit, this one's near and dear to me because it was part of the Google Lunar X Prize competition back when I was a baby researcher, however many gazillion
Yep.
years ago. Um, I worked with Google Lunar X Prize to interview all of the different teams and talk to them about what they were creating. And no one ended up winning the Google Lunar X Prize, in part because there were no heavy lift vehicles to get these guys to the moon.
Yeah.
And also in part because it just took longer to do any of this than anyone imagined back in the early 2000s. Now, with the Peregrine lunar lander, it's so frustrating. It was designed to deliver payloads to lunar orbit and the lunar surface. They had this really cool design that allowed multiple things to be mounted easily, and it finally got to take off in January. It separated nice and healthy. Everything was going fine. And then there was an engine firing that did not go as planned. And a whole lot of fuel was used to not go where they needed to go. And the result was that they ended up with a healthy spacecraft stranded in Earth orbit, unable to get to the moon.
Yeah, and so it launched, as you said. They tried to fire the engine. It was leaking propellant, and they realized that they had no way to control the mission. There's no way they could go into an insertion orbit on the moon. There's no way they could land on the surface of the moon. It went around the moon and came back to Earth and crashed into the atmosphere, and that was that. And I mean, it had a handful of really interesting experiments on board from both NASA and other sort of commercial partners and even other countries. And that sucked.
Yeah.
And this was like, this is part of what we talked about, that you're going to have these failures. So that's so 0 for 1.
Yeah.
So then we are just a couple of days after the second attempt. What was that about?
So Odysseus was, I have to admit, you're going to know more than I do about this because I decided I was not going to emotionally
Sure.
invest in another
All right.
lander until it had landed.
Sure. I'll give the
And
overview on this one. So Intuitive Machines is one of those CLPS partners, and their lander was called Odysseus, and this was going to be carrying 6 NASA payloads and 6 commercial payloads from other providers, and it was going to set foot on the moon near the South Pole. It was going to test out a bunch of experiments. There was a couple that I was really excited about too. One was, as it was landing, it was going to dump overboard a little selfie camera that would film its own landing,
Yeah.
which I thought was really cool. It had a little space telescope on it, so it was going to capture an image of the Milky Way, the first Milky Way image taken from the surface of the moon, which would have been very cool. Like, people always ask, like, when are we going to get an observatory on the moon? Well, Odysseus might have provided that first telescope on the moon. It had a bunch of experiments for NASA. One that was very interesting was it had an experiment on board designed to measure the distance to the lunar surface for future lunar landing attempts. From, just as a general, you think about like measuring the distance to asteroids and the surface of Mars, and just a new way to track your distance to the moon. And so what happened was, shortly before landing, realized that their landing system was not functioning. And you were saying on before.
Yeah, so they had a laser ranger on board that
Yeah.
had a do not fire laser uh, safety measure implemented. It's unclear from what I've seen so far if it was a physical pin or a software switch.
Right. Yeah.
And it was supposed to be removed prior to launch. It was not, and this was only discovered once they hit lunar
Right.
orbit. So,
And
yeah.
And so the part that's amazing that I loved about this story was realize that they had no way to measure the distance to the surface of the moon. They had this NASA experiment on board. And so
Right.
they were able to code a hack fix that allowed them to tap into this NASA instrument that wasn't designed to do this work. It was, and provide the service to the lander. And they were able to actually make that connection work. They were able to get access to this. But it clearly wasn't perfect. And so on Thursday, it made its landing attempt, and then it was strangely quiet after it should have landed. And then about
Yeah.
5 minutes into it, as various large antennae on Earth were pointed at it, they were able to get a very weak signal from the spacecraft. And what they realized was they were getting a very weak signal because most of its antennae were face down in the regolith. The big phase array on the top of it that's supposed to point towards the Earth, that was pointing, I don't know, perpendicular to the ground. Its other antennas were face down, and so they were detecting like reflected signals coming off of the lander coming back to Earth, and that was
And
enough for them to realize that the spacecraft was alive, but not in its proper configuration.
and the the communications around this has been fascinating. There's someday going to be master's theses written about this because the initial messaging was they landed, everything's fine.
Yes.
Silence. Then the next day was they landed, everything is not fine. They are not where they thought they should be, and they fell over, but it's okay because the only thing they fell over onto was art. So nothing was harmed except for art. And they keep
Right.
stressing the nothing was
Yeah.
hurt but art, which I'm sure is making the artist feel great about themselves.
Right. Only art was destroyed. Right. And now you get, actually, it probably doesn't have enough uh, electricity
Yeah.
supplies to last more than a couple of days. A lot of the experiments aren't going to be able to function as they were planned. So
Yeah.
it's
They
like
keep
we're
stepping back the messaging because it went from it's fine to it fell
yeah,
over, but it's still fine. They're
yeah,
there until lunar night and won't come back from that to they might
yeah,
not last that long. And
yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
you're exactly right. Like, it should have been, there should have been a lot more clarity at every stage of this. And it's interesting because generally with NASA, we get that level of transparency. but Intuitive Machines is a publicly traded company, and so the stock market was
Yeah.
trying to bet on, the stock price rose and fell like
It
crazy
crashed
as they
as
were
of
going
this
through this.
morning.
Oh, did it? I
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
looked. Yeah, so it was going through this process, going back and forth, and you're exactly right. I think people are going to say like what is the right amount if your company is attempting to provide realistic, up to date information about how the machine is doing, what is expected from the audience. And I thought overall their coverage was really good. It was definitely missing the live view, which was too bad. We got great
Yeah.
interviews from behind the scenes, people at NASA talking about
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
various experiments. We got like a nice simulation of where the spacecraft was, but it would have been great to have a much better sense. And you're exactly right. Like we just went for a better part of a day with everybody just going like, "What's going on?" and people
Right.
trying to figure out what it was. Like, definitely wasn't great.
They broke the
And
first rule of crisis management, which is you get in front of the problem,
yeah,
say that there's a problem, and be honest and open at the entire process. And by
yeah.
instead going, it went wrong, but it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. They actually that's harmful to your image according to standard crisis
Right.
management protocols.
So what comes next in the Clips program?
So I'm not seeing dates listed for any of the upcoming missions from any of my sources. Have you seen dates for anything in
No,
your sources?
no. So I mean, we know like in general. So there's two that are sort of we know of. One
Yeah.
is this Prime One, which is going to be a drill that's supposed to go to the South Pole. It's going to be launched on a Falcon 9,
Yeah,
and
this is
who's
another
providing?
intuitive machines.
Yeah, so this will be Intuitive Machines number two. And then the other one is the Viper rover. And this is going to be Astrobotic is going to be delivering the Viper rover. And
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of testing from a lot of stories from NASA about the rover itself. And so I guess, we have the exact delivery of the rover and how it's all going to operate is still up in the air, as it were. And then there's a bunch of other stuff, future missions. They're going to come to Firefly, more to
Mhm.
Intuitive Machines. So NASA has got like a tentative timeline out through 2026, but it's still open to change. And I think, the fact that two the first two missions have already not been 100% successful
Yeah.
will cause some kind of consequences, be it an internal audit. I wouldn't be surprised if things now have to take some extra time before they know what's going on. And I think the one I'm really looking forward to is the Viper,
Yes. And
right?
I
It's going
really
to be this
feel if any
cool lunar rover.
company, yeah, I have good feels about Astrobotic. And one of the things that is hard about this is these are companies that live and die by their success and their ability to get external funding. So we're starting to see things in the modern age of commercial space that we aren't used to. So Maston's mission went away because Maston had to file for bankruptcy.
Mm.
We saw Virgin Orbit go away and companies have to scramble to find new launches. So there is going to be a certain level of chaos introduced into the system beyond what we already get from Congress by relying on commercial partners. So now we have two different ways for things to go away. Either Congress can cancel them, or a company doing them can go bankrupt. And I feel like this is the fire and ice. Neither
Hmm.
is nice though.
Yeah, we're always going to oscillate between these two, right? Where we're going to have these two failures of these two missions, and then someone's going to go, well, why don't we just do this stuff in house? Because we've got all
Yeah,
the expertise, we've got this team, we've got all these engineers that are already doing this work. Okay, that makes sense. And then you do this stuff in house, and you're like, this is getting really expensive, and there's all of these commercial companies that have the potential. Why don't we hire out some of these commercial
right.
companies? And you just get this back and forth all the time, and eventually the market gets good enough that
Yeah.
you know NASA doesn't design its own iPhone; it buys them, and so at a certain point, you work with commercial entities. But when you're in those first nascent stages, it's really hard. And I think what NASA is trying to do is just jumpstart the process.
Right.
Let's make this commercial operation to deliver payloads to the surface of the moon. Let's make this happen sooner than later.
I, I
It would take 30 years, but maybe we can make this happen in 10 years instead.
I wish it was being done with more intensive mentoring. One of the things that I've always appreciated is universities that have technology incubators. You see these, especially in universities that have a strong tech connection and are actively innovating new patents, where they will create a part of their campus where they give space and mentoring and assistance to new companies looking to innovate how things are done. If NASA were to put in the level of mentoring, it changes the model a bit.
I mean, we don't know though. We don't know
It's
how much
true.
mentoring, and we don't know how many ex employees are at these different companies who were team leaders for various projects. Like, I'm sure it's a giant mix of that,
Yes,
and
but that isn't
tons of
part of the
technology
public
transfer.
image. I want
Right.
it to be NASA is not just throwing instruments on these guys. I want this to be a this is us transferring our knowledge.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there's a bit of that. Like, as an example, so SpaceX, one of the requirements of the upcoming human landing system is it has to be able to transfer propellant in
yeah,
orbit, cryogenic propellant, and this is a big
totally
challenge.
new.
But now, and yeah, and NASA has done a ton of research into this field, and they transferred a lot of this knowledge over to SpaceX and said, okay, here's where we are so far. You guys continue your experiments, but here's everything that we've learned so far. And so I think that there is there is definitely the potential to transfer a lot of this knowledge to these different companies. And I think, I'll bet you if we actually investigated each individual company in detail and looked at people's history and so on, that we would find all these really interesting connections.
Yes, that
And
I agree
again,
with.
I don't know what the right way is. Again, it's like, do you be hands off and just say, we'll pay you this amount to deliver our payload to the surface of the moon, or are you hands on micromanaging? I think it's better for NASA to not micromanage.
Oh,
It's
and
better
I
for these companies to
agree.
figure it out.
I
And
want to see public facing. Our goal is to transfer knowledge.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is now like a longer conversation about sort of what role NASA plays in space exploration and so on, which maybe is a conversation we can have in the future. There's a couple of, of things that I have very strong opinions about, but I think we've reached the end of the show. So um, why don't we wrap here? Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser, and thank you so much to all of our benefactors over on Patreon. I cannot tell you how much we rely on you to keep all of this going and keep our folks paid. You guys make me not cry each month when I do budgets, and I appreciate that. This week, I am honored to mispronounce the names of Ninja Nick, Jim
See, you're just getting out
McGeehan.
ahead of it.
I am. I am.
Yeah.
Ninja Nick, Jim McGeehan, J. Alex Anderson, Bruce Amazine, Frodo Tannenbaugh. I'm sorry. Planetar, Father Prax, Glenn McDavid, Mansky, the Air Major, Lou Zealand, Matthew Horstman, Matthias Hayden, Nyla, Sabra Lark, Scott Cohn, Marco Iorossi, Justin Proctor, the Big Squish Squash, David Gates, Georgie Ivanov, Scott Bieber, Iran Zagrev, Don Mundis, Benjamin Mueller, Cooper, Peter, Philip Grand, Sean Matz, Cami Racian, James Roger, Sam Brooks, and his mom. Thank you all so much. And if you too would like to have the opportunity for me to mispronounce your name because I did not take phonics as a child, become part of our Patreon at patreon.com/astronomycast. Read the fine print because not all levels have the opportunity for me to mispronounce their names.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm just
I
gonna
like how you're.
own.
I like how you're telling this. I like how you're owning this. This is great. You turn this into a privilege. Do you want the privilege of Pamela mispronouncing your name, no matter how simple your name is? Pamela will say it wrong.
It's
How
so
special,
true.
and in new and exciting and interesting ways that
That are not consistent from week to week.
yeah, that you will be delighted to hear how wrong she gets her name. Oh, so I've been reading new wave sci-fi,
Mm.
and it's so great. I'm reading some. Oh man, I don't even remember the book I just read. Hold on, Brian Aldiss.
Okay, this is me Googling because I usually take your book reading recommendations, although I'm currently deep in the middle of
James
rereading.
Blish, right? James Blish. Yeah, I'm reading James Blish. So the book that I just read is called Black Easter. What did he write? What's he best known for? Cities in Flight. He did a bunch of the Star Trek novelizations.
Mm-hmm.
So he did. Yeah, Spock Must Die. Yeah. Anyway,
This is from 1968.
1968. Yeah, and it was great. It was such a great little book. It's more of a novella. And then I also read Jack Vance, who is one of my favorite authors. I don't know if you've read any Jack Vance.
I don't think so.
No, he had a what was this? He had a he had a series. What was the name of his big series? Kugel's Saga, I think it's called.
That's
Yeah,
1983. Yeah.
yeah. Well, the ones that I read, but this book that I read earlier was great. So it was called The Last Castle. It's a novella, again, a novella. And it is like it's the story of a advanced civilization that lives on this planet, and they've enslaved all the different races
Mm-hmm.
that they've encountered and use them for different things. So the ones that are very technologically capable are used as sort of maintain all the machinery, and the ones, and they've these sort of intelligent birds they use as mounts, and they've got these lumbering ones they use as heavy labor, and these and then like ones that used for sex stuff and um
As you
and
do.
and there's a revolt, and they realize that they're so utterly independent and are just screwed. So and it's great, and just sort of they just talk about like the ways they manipulate these different races and how they end up being their downfall. But Jack Vance is such a tight writer, and you read his books and he can get across in a paragraph, take Tolkien one whole book.
Okay,
And I just
to
love
be
that style.
fair, Tolkien is not known for his brevity.
I know. So
I'm
anyway, there's so much gold in the sort of the new, like 1960 to 1990, like 1980, 1960, 1980. So about 20 years. And of course you've got the Isaac Asimovs, you've got the
Yeah.
Bradburys and Arthur C. Clarke and all those guys, but there's like so many lesser known authors who were writing in that time, and a lot of them are so great. And I remember as a kid, my parents had a great science fiction set of bookshelves, and I would just go through the books on their bookshelf. and
Yeah.
and I find like there's a lot of great writing today, but there was a brevity and a willingness to explore just the craziest ideas.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it are like the first time these ideas were thought through, and you're seeing people wrestle with it. I mean, even like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
yeah.
Philip K. Old K. Dick, like he's a legend for a reason. The old Philip K. Dick books are amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and there's
So,
just like you could live a whole lifetime and just read the books, the interesting sci-fi fantasy books that were written in between the 60s and the 80s. Sorry, I just want to finish one last point, and I'll let you go. And so now you get these you get things like the Wheel of Time or Brandon Sanderson stuff, right? And they're
yeah.
just
Tomes.
9 tomes, 9 million pages of a 20-part series
Yeah.
to get across a series of characters and blah blah blah, right? While a a, a Jack Vance book is going to be 100 pages and it's going to be tight and it's just hit you in the gut with the horrible conclusion, and you're just going to walk away really enjoying that content. So, all right, please, sorry.
So, Becky Chambers. She writes shorter books, she explores new ideas. Her Monk and Robot series, the idea is that the robots became sentient and just walked away. Just walked away. And so society has to rebuild itself without the technology.
Mm,
And then one day a robot comes back to basically check in on the humans and what happens from there.
that sounds
Um,
great.
Short, sweet, completely new, cool ideas. She also did The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet,
Hmm.
which is it takes a look at sentient spacecraft, multi-race crews, and how they deal with all the different things that come with the differences in life forms. Um, Her books are shorter. They're going to be, and they have new ideas, and they're super cool. So,
Mhm.
I would definitely start with a Psalm for the Wild Built.
Cool. That's awesome. And that's a novella. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so there are new books being written with new ideas that aren't tomes. Alex White has a a basically love story to broken humans in middle age getting yelled at to lose weight while trying to fix the universe. And it's these are books written for Gen X.
I mean, I think part of it is that the media message, like
Yeah,
back in the 1950s, 40s, you had these pulp collections
yeah,
of science fiction books where you would buy it, every month you get the new copy of amazing
yeah.
stories, and it would contain 10 short stories
Mm-hmm.
by 10 different sci-fi writers.
Mm-hmm.
And they all got to kind of cut you know, their chops on their teeth, earn their chops. Anyway, cut their teeth on this sort of where you have to be quick and you have to get to the point. And you have to deliver on plot and good characters
Mm-hmm.
and a really compelling idea, and you want people to be sort of blown away by what it is that you create. And then those people then went on to write actual novels. And I can't think
Escape Pod.
of a just well, I mean, escape pod, but that's like podcasts. And do
It's
they get
short
paid?
stories, and they do get paid.
And do they do get paid? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, but okay,
they pay the
so
authors.
that's
They pay the slush pile readers.
yeah,
Um, and Hugo nominated.
yeah. Sure. But there aren't, I guess, much. Can't think of a lot of other places. I mean, like
No.
this is great. This game is doing this, but I can't think of a lot of other places where you get. Man, now I'm about to rant. Um,
So there was Lightspeed magazine. It went away.
yeah, yeah.
Um, is Mother Zeta still around?
Kids these days are on the
No.
TikToks,
Yeah.
and it is not conducive to reading long form content. And I think there's the kids these days that are on the TikToks, and then there are the people who like to read fiction. And
Yeah.
there's this, and I think they split into a couple of people want kind of comfort food, and I think those are the people who want to read the tomes. They want to they want to read a book that's 1,000 pages, and they want to be taken away to this other
Yeah.
world and follow these characters and the rise and the falls and the twists and the turns.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the here's 10 short stories written by up and coming authors, a few you've seen before, because I'm like, obviously, like the internet disambiguates everything, so
So
why
there
bother, right?
there are amazing collections out there. The
Yeah.
Star Wars in their own voice books. The what were they called? There was a series of science fiction collections where they were all set in a post peak oil Portland area. Man, I can't remember the name of them. But there are these amazing collections that come out, and you just unfortunately need to be following these folks on social media
Yeah.
because it's the distribution that has changed. All
Right.
this
Right.
stuff is still there.
Yep. It's
It's
the distribution. Yeah.
and because we don't have the surreal media where every week we're getting this week's Omni, next week's amazing stories,
Yep.
we're not getting in the physical mail, the physical book anymore, piling up on our
Yep.
shelves.
That you can share and talk about with your friends and discuss what you loved and what you didn't love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I should really I'm gonna sign up to Escape Pod. I haven't
It's really good, and the it's all different authors, from folks that have already won every prize out there to people that it's their first story ever published.
yeah.
And so it has that introduction of new voices.
Yeah. Which is what we need. And I don't know what the solution to this problem is, because this is the case in everything that we do. Like the television shows that we watch. Like, what are you watching on TV right
Nothing.
now? Oh, okay. All right. Um,
I
well,
started rereading the Brandon Sanderson books, and now I live there for the next year. He came
yeah,
out with
because the
4 new
guy,
books,
because the
and
giant
now I'm
phones. Yeah, that guy.
trapped. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he is like somehow the devil. It is just it's somehow like he's attempting to destroy the productivity of humanity by writing more books than human beings can read.
Yes.
Because that's where he's going. Like,
Yes.
he will write more books than the fastest readers can read at a certain point.
Yes.
If this you'll reach this Brandon Sanderson singularity, I think is where we're going towards. Um,
John
uh,
Scalzi has short standalone books as well.
sure.
Kaiju Preservation Society brought me an amount of joy I cannot
Mm,
otherwise
I want
express.
to read that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the Old Man's War, but there's like a lot of his stuff that I want to read. So yeah, and I understand like these problems that I'm saying. People are attempting to, like, there's Laser, which is a great podcast where they cover a book every episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are people who are trying really hard to get us to know about interesting long form content.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you know, on the one hand, are people's in the chat, for those of you who are in the chat right now, you know, I'm gonna do a poll. Um, hold on. I'm gonna start a
And I
poll.
found the name of the series that I couldn't remember. It's the Metatropolis series. Each one has a different suite of authors writing for it, and they all exist in a post-peak oil, but also highly technological, where like they've given the trees voices by figuring out how to connect them to the internet.
Yeah.
There's some really cool ideas, and it's all short stories. It's how I got my garden planted a couple of years ago.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff there's some, I mean, and there are ways to access this stuff. Like, I get a
Hmm.
lot of, so my library has a app that lets you overdrive, lets you download
Yeah.
audiobooks.
I
And
I also do a ton of humble bundles. They
yes,
regularly
yeah,
have books, and it's like I am
same
getting
thing.
books and I am contributing to good. I cannot say no to those.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing, so I've got an app that I use on my phone. You can feed a PDF into the app on the phone, and it
Hmm.
will read out the book to you.
That's
And
cool. Does it
so
suck though?
it's fine. Like
Okay.
it's not an actual audiobook, but it is a robot narrator that is but the voices are pretty good these days.
Hmm.
And I've become very accustomed to the voice, and so you don't it's definitely not the performance that you're listening to. It's just a way to listen to the the content, as you said, while you're out and gardening. And if what you have is the PDF that you got at the Humble Bundle, you feed that into it's called Eevee. It only works on Android. It doesn't work on um, iPhones. I haven't been able to find an iPhone reader software that'll read a PDF to you.
It's built in natively. It's part
Hmm.
of the accessibility tools.
I'll double check that. Maybe I can find a way to make that work.
Yeah.
So the poll results are uh, do you read more books now than you did 10 years ago? 43% say yes, and 57% say no. So,
So that feels
okay.
like, given internet poll statistics, a tie.
It does feel pretty close. Yeah. All right. And so it would be interesting to see do you, I mean, if I ask the question, do you feel like you fritter your life away on short form video and social media? I wonder how many people would say, yeah, totally.
The doom scroll is real.
Yeah, yeah. I feel pretty positive. I have effectively removed the doom scroll from my life.
I will say I found a new technology that has me excited, and I'm glad that it is new and doesn't have a lot of content. Um, there are folks that are making stories in VR where you just like experience the story completely immersively.
Wow,
So I just downloaded my first one. I will tell you how I like it next week.
that sounds
Um,
great.
but like it has amazing actors doing the voices. Like Meryl Streep is one of the voices in it.
Wow,
So yeah,
that sounds great.
fully
All right, we should
immersive
wrap this up.
stories.
I gotta do an interview in like 20
Okay.
minutes, so we gotta go. Thanks
Okay.
everybody for joining us today. Thanks Pamela for bringing the brain. Sorry in
Ah,
advance to
ah.
Richard and everybody who uh, will have to edit this nonsense. And everyone watched us today. Thanks to all the patrons, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye bye.